The smell of scorched polymer is the first thing Yan Jeha notices when he opens his eyes. Then the silence. Then the slow, terrible understanding that the silence is wrong. That in the 12 seconds before the Varath pulse hit the Kalama 3, there had been 4 voices on the comms, and now there is only one, and it belongs to him. He is lying on the inner hull of the command module, not the floor, the hull. Which means at some point in the last 30 seconds, he was thrown sideways hard enough to leave a dent in the emergency storage cabinet, and he does not remember any of it. He sits up. The motion sensors click on. The emergency lighting, amber, half power, washes the cabin in the color of old bruises. Column of control, this is Yan Jeha. His voice is flat. He has not yet given himself permission to panic. I need a status report. I need it now. The response that comes back is not from control. It is static. Beneath the static, like something breathing through wire, the low harmonic signature of a Varath array cycling down. They are not done with the Kalama 3. They are simply satisfied with what they have already accomplished. He finds Lieutenant Park Min-Soo first, still buckled into his station. There is no visible trauma. The Varath pulse is not a kinetic weapon. It is a resonance weapon. It targets the iron in blood, the calcium in bone, the electric soup of the human nervous system, and it shakes all of it at a frequency the body cannot survive. Park looks like a man who fell asleep at his console. Jeha checks for a pulse because he has to. He does not find one. Senior Mission Specialist Chodare is behind the secondary airlock door. She had been moving toward the emergency suit locker when the pulse hit. Her hand is still on the latch. He has to work to straighten her fingers. He does this carefully. He does not know why it feels important, but it does. He finds Captain Huang Dojin half inside the crawl space beneath the navigation array. She had been checking a relay fault that the automated systems had flagged 40 minutes earlier. He understands, with a grief that is slow and heavy and too large to look at directly, that if the relay fault had not been flagged, if she had been at her station, she would have been behind the radiation shielding, and she might have survived. He closes her eyes. He climbs out of the crawl space. He sits on the floor of the command module for approximately 4 minutes, and then he stands up because there is nothing else to do. He is 41 hours from the surface of Karath Vo at current deceleration. He has oxygen for 62 hours. He has a Varath weapons array pointed at his hull that has already demonstrated its willingness to use him as target practice. He has one emergency beacon that, if the Varath have not already jammed the frequency, will reach the nearest human relay in 18 hours. He activates the beacon. He records a message on the backup drive. His parents, his sister, the name of his 7th grade science teacher who told him once that he was too stubborn to fail. And then he starts working the problem. Because stubbornness, he has found, is just problem solving with nowhere left to run. What Yan Jeha does not know, because the Varath pulse burned out his long-range comms array, is that his beacon gets through.
What he also does not know is that the person who picks it up in a cramped signal station at the outer edge of the Karath System's human monitoring post is a 47-year-old former mission director named Baek Sung-chul,
Who has spent the last 6 years drinking bad coffee and cataloging stellar phenomena
and doing absolutely nothing that requires him to make decisions that might get anyone killed.
Baek Sung-chul spent 4 years building the Kolima program. He spent 3 months after the Kolima 1 disaster answering questions he had no good answers to. He spent the subsequent 6 years being very precisely, very deliberately forgettable. He is looking at Jeha's beacon signature when Coordinator Im Ha-yoon of the Joint Human Monitoring Delegation appears in his doorway. She is 29 years old. She has a file in her hand and the look of someone who has already made up her mind about something and is here to deliver the verdict. Director Baek, I'm not a director anymore. The Kalama 3 has been attacked, she says. Some survivor, 41 hours from Karath Vo surface at last recorded deceleration. We think the Varath array has a jammer, but it didn't get the beacon window. We have contact. He stares at the readout. Who's running the mission now? Kwan. Kwan is handling the political side. The Varath have filed a formal protest claiming the Kalima 3 entered restricted space. The minister is occupied. She pauses. There is no one currently running the technical side. That's convenient. You built that ship, Im Ha-yoon says. Every system, every backup, every workaround, every flaw. Yes, she says without flinching, every flaw. He is quiet for a long time. Outside the porthole, the Karath system's small pale sun sits at the edge of the habitable band, throwing light that always looks slightly wrong to human eyes. too blue at the edges, too gold at the center, like a photograph with the white balance off. The survivor, he says. Who is he? She tells him. He closes his eyes. When he opens them, he puts down his coffee. Get me a line to the ship. The first time Baek Sung-chul's voice comes through the static on Jae-ha's secondary comms, patched through the monitoring post's relay array, weak and digitized but unmistakably human, Jae-ha sits very still for a moment. Column 3. This is Baek Sung-chul, former technical director, Column program, currently operating under Joint Human Monitoring Delegation Authority. I need you to hear me clearly. You are not going to die on my ship. Jae-ha lets out a breath that is not quite a laugh. With respect, Director, it stopped being your ship 6 years ago. Everything I built is still my ship. A pause. How's your oxygen scrubber? Cycling at 83%. Good. Don't touch the manual override. The Column 3 scrubber has a cascade failure mode if you cycle the manual override below 92% atmospheric. It's in the secondary technical addendum. Nobody reads the secondary technical addendum. I didn't read the secondary technical addendum. Nobody does. That's why I'm here. Another pause, and in the pause, Jaha can hear the sound of Im Ha-yoon's voice in the background. Rapid, urgent, and the click of Baek working through something at a console. Lieutenant Yeon, your mission objective was the Kareth-Vo survey grid. Sections 4 through 9, atmospheric sample collection, mineral resonance mapping. Is that correct? Yes. And Captain Huang had authorized continuation of the survey approach after the weapons array activated. Jaha is quiet for a moment. She had. Then you're going to continue the approach. Director, the Varath array, cycled down 11 minutes ago. Baek's voice is level. Not calm. Jae-ha has been in enough briefing rooms to know the difference between calm and a man holding himself very still so he doesn't break. They think they're done. They've classified the Column 3 as a neutralized asset. If you hold current deceleration and don't transmit anything they can use to recalibrate, they will not fire again. They have filed their protest. They believe the matter is closed. Jae-ha looks out the forward port at the wide brown curve of Kareth-Vo. At this distance, the planet looks peaceful. At this distance, everything does. You want me to land. I want you to complete the mission your captain authorized. I want to give the delegation something they can put in front of the Varath Conclave and say, this is what humans do. You fire on us, you kill 3 of our people, and the 4th one lands and does the work anyway. You tell us it's restricted space. We tell you we were there first. You tell us the survey was hostile. We hand you 72 hours of atmospheric and mineral data and ask what exactly about that threatens you. Jae-ha doesn't answer immediately. Lieutenant, Baek says, and something in the word is different. Stripped of the technical director cadence, stripped of the formal relay distance. Your captain authorized the approach. I'm asking you to honor it. Jae-ha looks at the navigation console. He looks at the mission dossier, still open on Captain Huang's screen. He looks at his hands. Walk me through the landing sequence, he says. The Column 3 was not designed to land single crew. This is not a secret. The landing sequence requires 2 people at minimum, 1 on the approach controls, 1 monitoring the thruster array and the landing strut hydraulics simultaneously, because there is a 40-second window during final descent where both systems require active management and neither can be automated without the kind of compute power they hadn't been able to fit into the Column 3's budget. Baek had flagged this in early design. He had been overruled on cost grounds. He had written it into the secondary technical addendum. Nobody had read it. He reads it to Jae-ha now, from 6 light minutes away, in real time, translating the addendum's careful engineering language into something a man with 1 pair of hands and a functional instrument panel can actually use. The starboard strut sensor will give you a false low reading during final approach, he says. It's a calibration issue. It's always been a calibration issue. Ignore it. Trust the port strut reading and calculate 60% of that. That's not comforting. No, but it's accurate. Baek's voice is dry. How are you doing? The question is simple enough that it catches Jaha off guard. Not how is the ship, not what is your fuel reserve, not what is your current approach vector. How are you doing? Jaha is quiet for a moment. I keep thinking about Lieutenant Park's console, he says finally. He had a photo taped to the top corner. His daughter at a beach somewhere. I couldn't take it off. I tried, but I couldn't. The relay hiss fills the silence. I know, Baek says. I know. Jae-ha touches the final approach controls, initiating descent. What happens next is 47 minutes that Jae-ha will later be unable to describe as a continuous memory. It comes back to him in fragments. The shriek of atmosphere against the heat shield, violent and close in a way that no simulation ever captures. The port strut reading climbing, and then plateauing, and then climbing again. Bake's voice, steady through the static, counting down system states like a man reading a river by the sound of it rather than the sight. The moment the Varath jammer caught the relay signal and cut out for 14 seconds, which is the longest 14 seconds Yanjeha has ever lived. And then the signal coming back, and Bake's voice in the middle of a sentence he had clearly been continuing the whole time. Because he had decided Jaha needed to hear words, even if Jaha couldn't hear them. The Kalama 3 sets down 300 meters east of the target grid site. The landing struts hold. The hull integrity reads nominal. The scrubber cycles up to 91% without being touched. Jaha sits in the pilot's seat and breathes. Kalama 3 Bake says, "Confirm landing, confirmed." Jaha's voice is thicker than he intends. He clears his throat. Landing confirmed. All systems nominal. We are on the surface of Karath Vo. The "we" is deliberate. He is not sure why. He means it. Karath Vo's surface is red-brown and dry, with a texture that the mission briefing described as fractured basaltic regolith, and that Jaha, standing in it for the first time in his EVA suit, thinks looks exactly like cracked earth after a drought, like something that was once alive and is very much not anymore. The gravity is slightly less than Earth standard. It makes his steps feel wrong in a way he can't quite calibrate, like moving in a dream where the physics are almost right. He has 4 hours of EVA-rated oxygen in his suit. He has the survey equipment. He has Baek Sung-chul's voice through the suit's comms relay, patched through the monitoring post with a signal that cuts in and out when he walks more than 400 meters from the ship. He does the work. Section 4 takes 90 minutes, atmospheric samples at 6 points, mineral resonance mapping in a grid, soil core at the designated depth. Section 5 is faster. The terrain is more regular, and he has found a rhythm now. The rhythm of someone doing a job that needs doing and not allowing himself to think too far past the job. Bake talks him through the equipment specs, reminds him about the resonance calibration offset that the Kalama 3's equipment has always had, mentions that the atmospheric sampler's intake valve sticks at low temperatures and needs a 30-second warm cycle. You've had these conversations before, Jaha says, in a lull between stations, with the Kalama 1 crew. A pause. Yes. What happened? The official report was. He doesn't finish the sentence. The official report was 312 pages of technical language that said, in essence, that a catastrophic failure occurred and that the full causal chain remained under investigation. Thruster gimbal fault during ascent, Bake says. We found it in the post-mission review. 14 months before the mission, it was flagged. It was classified as low priority. Budget cycle. Nobody went back to it. He is quiet. The man who flagged it was Dr. Huang Q Tai. He was the one who understood exactly what had happened. He is the reason I left. Jaha is at Station 6. He kneels in the red-brown dust and sets the resonance probe and lets it run. And for a moment, all he can hear is the probe's low hum and the wind across his suit and the distant scratch of the relay signal. Captain Huang, he says, yes. She knew about her father. She knew. Bake's voice is careful. She joined the program anyway. She said, the last time I spoke to her, before the mission, she said that if someone didn't keep going, then everything that was lost was just loss, that it had to be worth something. He stops. I disagreed with that for a long time. Jaya pulls the probe. He moves to the next station. And now, he says, the relay hisses. When Bake speaks again, his voice is different. Not softer, exactly, but less guarded. I'm watching a man I've never met do the work that 2 good people died to make possible, Bake says. I think she was probably right. The Varath Conclave's response to the Kalama 3's continued operation comes 6 hours into the surface survey. It is not another weapons pulse. It is a formal broadcast, transmitted on the standard diplomatic band, in the Varath trade tongue, that the Joint Human Monitoring Delegation's translation systems parse in real time. The Kalama 3 is operating in violation of the Karathvo territorial exclusion, and all human personnel must vacate immediately or face consequences. Jaha is in Section 8 when the broadcast comes through. He is 3 hours from completing the survey grid. He has enough oxygen for approximately 4 hours and 15 minutes. I heard it, he says, before Bak can speak. The delegation is meeting now. Coordinator Im is arguing for an emergency injunction. Minister Kwan is. Bak stops himself. Coordinator Im is arguing for an injunction. How long will that take? The relay is quiet long enough that Jaha knows the answer before Bak gives it. Longer than you have on the surface. Jaha checks his oxygen readout. He moves to the next sample station. Then I should keep working, he says. Jaha. It is the first time Bake has used his given name. The Varath Conclave's exclusion claim is contested. Legally, diplomatically, we have a case. But if they fire again, did they fire on the Kalama 1 crew? A pause. No, that was. I know what that was. I'm asking if the Varath have a history of firing on occupied vessels. Bake is quiet. They have a history of firing on vessels they believe to be unoccupied or neutralized. Then the best thing I can do is be very obviously occupied. Jaha sets the atmospheric probe and watches the intake indicator. They don't understand why I'm still here. A neutralized asset doesn't land. A neutralized asset doesn't run a survey grid. They're watching me and they don't know what to do with what they're seeing. He hears, through the relay, Imha Yoon's voice in the background, urgent, rapid, and the sound of other voices, and the percussion of a comm system handling more traffic than it was designed for. Lieutenant, Bake says, there's a development. Good or bad? Possibly both. The Varath have a monitoring station on Karath Vo's secondary moon. Standard configuration, 3 crew, science class. They have been observing the Kalama 3 since it entered the system. One of their crew, designation Varath classification Ketharau, which roughly translates as junior analyst, has filed an inquiry with the Conclave asking why a neutralized vessel completed a landing approach. Jaha absorbs this. He moves the probe to the next station. They're curious, he says. The Conclave's response was to classify the inquiry as internal, but it was flagged before it was classified. It's in the open monitoring record. Coordinator M is citing it in the injunction. The Varath fired on a ship, Jaha says, and then watched the ship land anyway, and one of them wants to know why. He considers this. He has collected samples at 23 of the 28 grid stations. He has approximately 2 hours and 50 minutes of oxygen. He has, by his rough calculation, about 90 minutes of work remaining. Tell Coordinator M, he says, to transmit all survey data as it comes in, real time. Open channel. Jaha, if the Varath are watching, make sure they can see what I'm doing, every reading, every sample log. Let them see what the survey is. Let them see it's not a weapon. It's data. There is a long pause. You know, Bake says, you sound like Captain Huang. Jaha doesn't answer. He has work to do. The meteor shower is not in the mission briefing. This is because it is not a regular phenomenon. It is the tail end of a debris field from a collision event in the outer system that was tracked but considered low probability for intersection with the Karath Vo survey window. The calculation was correct. The calculation was also, by a margin of approximately 6 hours, wrong. The debris hits when Jaha is at Station 27. It hits without warning. The first impact 60 meters to his left. A flash and a compression wave through the regolith that he feels through his boots, and he is already moving before he has consciously registered what he is moving toward. The problem is, the Chalama 3 is 311 meters away, and the debris field is dense and moving fast, and the regolith, cracked basalt, does not provide reliable footing at anything above a careful walk. He runs anyway. The second impact is closer. The third is behind him, and the compression wave clips his left leg and sends him down onto one knee, and he loses 2 seconds getting back up. And in those 2 seconds, he does the arithmetic, 40 seconds to the ship at a dead run on this surface conservatively, without further interference. He does not have 40 uninterrupted seconds. He has something else. The Kalama 3's cargo bay holds 2 survey drones, small, rotor-driven, rated for Karath Vo's thin atmosphere. They were designed for aerial mapping runs. They have a maximum payload of 12 kilograms. Jaha weighs, in his Evia suit, approximately 140 kilograms. He is not planning to use them for their rated payload. He has, in the pocket of his Evia suit, the drone control handset that every mission specialist carries for field calibration. He has 200 meters of distance remaining to the ship. He has a debris field striking the surface at irregular intervals in a pattern he cannot predict. He opens the cargo bay remotely. He pulls both drones on their extendable tethers, emergency retrieval feature, standard on all Kalama survey drones, designed for exactly 0 of the situations it is currently being used for. He locks the tether clips to the load-bearing anchors on the chest piece of his Evia suit. Director Bake, he says. I'm here. Bake's voice is very level. He can hear the impact sounds through the relay. I'm watching the drone telemetry, rotors at maximum. Can they lift any meaningful percentage of my weight in this gravity? At this atmospheric pressure with both rotors, a pause. The pause is very short, which means Bake had already run the calculation before Jaha asked. 12 to 16%, it won't fly you. It'll reduce your effective ground weight. That's enough for faster ground speed. That's enough for about 15 to 20% faster ground speed on this surface, yes. Another pause. Jae-ha, you understand that if a debris piece hits a drone, I understand. He starts the rotors. The drones spin up. He feels immediately a strange lightness in his legs. Not flight, nothing like flight, but something like the difference between running in water and running on land. He starts moving. What happens next takes less than 2 minutes and will take him considerably longer than that to fully remember. He runs. The drones pull. The regolith under his feet is treacherous, and he goes down twice, and both times the drone tethers pull him forward and up before he can completely fall. A debris strike 20 meters ahead throws up a spray of rock fragments that he runs through and feels clattering against his suit's outer shell. And he feels the readout on his suit's integrity indicator spike and drop back. And he does not look at what it dropped back to. The Column 3's airlock is in front of him. He hits the exterior pad. The airlock cycles. He is inside before the cycle completes, pulling the outer door manually, and then the inner door, and then he is in the ship, and the sound of impacts on the hull is a dull percussion through the walls, and he is on the floor of the airlock, with his back against the inner door, breathing. Jae-ha. Baek's voice through the suit comms. Urgent. Not panicked, but the careful steadiness of a man who has been very afraid and is now allowing himself to stop being quite so afraid. Status. Jae-ha checks his suit integrity. The indicator reads 78%. It is above the critical threshold. He is fine. He is fine. On the ship, he says. All 28 samples collected. The silence on the relay lasts 3 seconds. All 28, Baek says. Survey complete. Jae-ha pulls off the drone tethers. His hands are shaking, but his hands have earned it. What's the status on the Lunar Gateway? The Joint Human Monitoring Delegation's emergency session lasts 4 hours. During those 4 hours, Baek Sung-chul sits at the relay console and talks to Yeon Ja-ha, and Coordinator Im Ha-eun argues with 7 different delegation representatives and 2 Varath Conclave observers and the survey data from the Kolyma 3. Transmitted in real time, open channel, across the standard monitoring frequencies, is reviewed by 3 different scientific panels, one of which contains a Varath analyst named Ketharau, who requested access to the data through a channel that is technically informal and technically not a violation of the Conclave's classification order. The data is unremarkable. This is the point. The data shows atmospheric composition and mineral deposits and soil core samples from a region of Karath Vo that has been claimed by the Varath Conclave as exclusive territory on the basis that it contains significant deposits of a rare earth mineral used in their resonance drive technology. The data also shows that the survey was non-extractive, non-invasive, and scientifically consistent with the treaty provisions governing human research operations in contested systems, provisions the Varath Conclave co-signed 7 years ago. The data does not contain weapons calibrations. It does not contain military positioning information. It contains the iron content of 762 soil samples and the atmospheric particulate density at 28 surface stations. Ketharau, reviewing the data, submits a second inquiry to the conclave. This one is not classified before it enters the open monitoring record. It asks why the exclusion order was filed if the Column 3's operations were treaty compliant. It does not get an answer, but it is in the record. The plan for Jae-ha's rescue is the kind of plan that looks, on paper, like it should not work. The human monitoring post has a resupply vessel, the Incheon-class Sambong, small and fast and not designed for passenger rescue operations, but equipped with a docking collar that can interface with the Chollima 3's emergency port if the tolerances are within 0.3 millimeters. It is 6 hours away at maximum burn. Jae-ha has 4 hours and 8 minutes of oxygen. The math does not work. Talk to me, Jae-ha says. He is sitting in the pilot's chair. He is very calm. He has been through too much in the last 18 hours to spend his remaining oxygen being afraid of the arithmetic. What can we do about the oxygen? The Column 3's life support is separate from your suit reserves. The ship's system is running fine. Your suit is the constraint. Baek is already moving through the technical specs. Emergency crossfeed. It's in the secondary technical addendum. It requires a suit-to-ship umbilical connection and a manual valve operation on the life support panel. The crossfeed will pull from ship's reserves to extend suit capacity, but the umbilical is rated for a resting metabolic draw. If you're moving, it won't keep up, so I sit still. For approximately 6 hours, yes, Jay-Ha thinks about this. Outside the forward port, the meteor shower has passed. Kareth Vo's surface is calm again, red-brown and silent and enormous. In the middle distance, he can see the site of Section 4's survey station, the tiny flag marker he planted to indicate a completed site. What about the Sambong's crew, he asks. Can they accelerate? They're already at maximum. And the gateway, there is a pause. The Joint Monitoring Protocol maintains a multi-species orbital station at the outer edge of the Kareth system, a remnant of the period 8 years ago, when the Vareth Conclave and the human delegation had briefly operated under a cooperative framework before the territorial disputes had hardened into something that looked less like diplomacy and more like preparation. The station carries 3 human crew and, currently, 2 Varath observers who are there because the protocol requires their presence, and they are there because the Varath Conclave is very careful to maintain the appearance of good faith even while acting in something entirely other than it. The gateway is 4 hours and 20 minutes away at their maximum burn, Bake says. But the gateway's mission profile doesn't include rescue operations, and the Varath observers would need to consent to any deviation from standard operating parameters. Jia absorbs this. He connects the umbilical. He opens the crossfeed valve. He sits back in the pilot's chair, and he breathes at a deliberate pace, the way they'd taught him in the Corps. Slow inhale, slow exhale. Keep the metabolic rate low. Keep the oxygen draw low. Buy yourself time. Beak, he says. Connect me to the gateway. Ja, I know. Connect me anyway. The relay takes 40 seconds to reroute. When the channel opens, the voice that answers is crisp and professional and human. Commander Seo Mi-Ray, third-year gateway posting, keeping her voice very carefully neutral in the way that people do when they have been told their hands are tied and they are not sure they agree. Cholima 3, I have you on the channel, Commander Seo says. I want you to know that we are aware of your situation. Then you know I have approximately 4 hours on the crossfeed, Jay-Ha says. And the Sambong is 6 hours out. A pause. I also want you to know that I've been instructed that any deviation from our mission profile requires unanimous consent of all station personnel, including our Vareth observers. I understand. Jay-Ha looks out at the Kareth Vo surface. He looks at the survey flag in the middle distance. He thinks about Captain Huang, who knew what she was flying into and flew into it anyway, because someone had to keep going. Commander Seo, I want to tell you something about what I did today. She doesn't answer. But she doesn't close the channel either. The Vareth filed an exclusion order on Kareth Vo territorial space, he says. This morning they killed 3 of my crew to enforce it. I landed anyway. I ran a survey of sections 4 through 9, atmospheric, mineral, soil. I completed all 28 stations. In the last hour, I did it through a debris shower. He pauses. The data is in the monitoring record. It's unremarkable. It's exactly what the treaty said we were allowed to do. He can hear the gateway's background systems through the relay. Soft, technical, distant. I'm not telling you this to make an argument, he says. I'm telling you because I think you deserve to know what you'd be coming to help. Not a weapons test, not an incursion. A science mission run by a man who is trying to keep a promise to his captain. He stops. Whatever you decide, I understand. The channel is quiet for a long time. Then, very precisely, in the trade tongue that the monitoring systems parse in real time, one of the Varath observers says something. The translation comes back. This one completed the survey. There is a pause, and then the second Varath observer says, yes, another pause. And then the first observer says, and the translation matrix takes an extra moment, because the phrasing is not standard. It is an older construction, formal in a way that the standard diplomatic vocabulary doesn't quite capture. Something that comes back as, an astronaut is an astronaut. Commander Seo Mi-Ray's voice when it comes is different. The careful neutrality is gone. Kalima 3, the gateway is initiating an emergency burn. ETA 4 hours and 6 minutes. Please maintain your current metabolic rate. A pause. We're coming. They dock with 14 minutes of crossfeed oxygen remaining. The docking collar interface is 0.1 millimeters inside tolerance, which is either very good engineering or very good luck. And Baek Sung-chul will later say it is the former, and coordinator Im Ha-yoon will say it is both, and they will have that argument periodically for several years. Commander Seo Mi-Ray is the first through the docking collar. She is followed by her crew, and then by the 2 Varath observers, who enter the Kalima 3 in the precise deliberate way of beings, who have decided to do something and have committed to it entirely. They look at the console where Park Min-soo's photograph is still taped to the corner. They do not look away from it quickly. Jae-ha, still connected to the umbilical, still sitting in the pilot's chair, watches them. One of the Varath observers, Ketharau, he will learn later, the junior analyst who asked the questions, looks at him for a long moment. Then it looks at the survey equipment stacked in the cargo bay doorway, the collection bags, the flagging markers, the drone tethers still clipped to the EVS suit's chest piece. It says something in the Varath trade tongue. The translation matrix renders it as, "You finished." "Yes," Ja says. Ketharau considers this, then it says something else. The translation takes a moment. Why? Jae-ha thinks about Captain Huang, who flew toward a weapons array because the work mattered. He thinks about Baek Sung-chul, who spent 6 years being forgettable and picked up a beacon signal and came back anyway. He thinks about Park Min-soo's daughter at a beach somewhere, in a photograph taped to a console. Because it wasn't finished, he says. Ketharau is quiet for a long time. Then it inclines its head, a gesture that the translation matrix doesn't have a category for, but that Commander Seo, watching from the doorway, will later describe as looking like respect. Baek Sung-chul is at the monitoring post when the Sambong brings the gateway crew and Yeon Ja-ha into dock 17 hours later. He is standing at the relay console because there is nowhere better to be, and when the docking confirmation comes through and Im Ha-yeon says, "He's on board, he's safe," Baek puts both hands flat on the console and looks at the Kareth system's pale, wrong-balanced sun through the porthole and breathes. He has been awake for 31 hours. He has, by his own rough accounting, talked a man through a single-crew planetary landing, a meteor shower, and a 4-hour oxygen conservation hold. He has done all of this from a signal station that smells like old coffee and recycled air. 6 light minutes from the nearest human, and rather further than that from the decision that defined the last 6 years of his life. He does not know, yet, that Coordinator Im Ha-yoon has filed a formal recommendation to the joint delegation that Baek Sung-chul be reinstated as Technical Director of the expanded Kolima program, the program that will exist, she argues in the recommendation, because of what happened today. He does not know that the Varath Conclave's internal record now contains Ketharau's second inquiry and its absence of a response, and that this absence will matter in the formal proceedings that will eventually follow. He does not know that the survey data from sections 4 through 9 of the Kareth Vogrid will become the central exhibit in those proceedings, or that the proceedings will take 3 years, or that they will end, tentatively and incompletely, and with a great deal still unresolved. With something that looks slightly more like a framework for coexistence than anything that existed before the Kalima 3 entered the system. He knows one thing right now, which is that Yeon Ja-ha is alive. And he knows one other thing, which is that the 28 survey stations are completed. He thinks about Captain Huang Dojin, who told him once that if someone didn't keep going, then everything that was lost was just loss. He has disagreed with that for 6 years. He is not sure he disagrees anymore. He is still standing at the console when his comms chime. He picks up Director Baek. Jae-ha's voice is rough and tired and very steady. Survey data is logged. Sections 4 through 9 complete. "I know," Baek says. "I watched it come in." A pause. Then Jae-ha says, "Thank you. Don't thank me. I built a ship with a broken scrubber calibration and a 2-person landing sequence and no weather monitoring for debris fields." His voice is dry, but something underneath it is not dry at all. "Everything that went right today you did." "We did," Jae-ha says. Baek is quiet for a moment. He looks at the readout. He looks at the Kareth system's pale sun. "Yes," he says. "We did." When the Sambong docks fully and the crew manifest confirmation comes through, Yeon Jae-ha's name appears in the survivor column, and below it in the mission status field, someone, Im Ha-yoon probably, she is precise about these things, has entered the word, complete. It is not a word that covers everything. It does not cover Park Min-soo's daughter at the beach, or Cho Do-rae's hand on the airlock latch, or Captain Huang Do-jin in the crawl space with the relay fault. It does not cover the Varath pulse or the meteor field, or 4 hours of rationed breathing in a pilot's chair on the surface of a world that did not want to let him leave. But it is accurate. The survey is complete. The work that Captain Huang authorized is finished. The data exists in the open record, unremarkable and precise and impossible to undo. Somewhere on the monitoring post's secondary screen, a small flag marker icon is still pinging. The locator beacon on Station 4's survey flag, still planted in the red-brown dust of Kareth Vo's surface, still transmitting. Baek looks at it for a long time. Then he closes his eyes and allows himself, for the first time in 6 years, to feel like something he built did not end in failure. Outside, the Karath system's sun moves in its slow arc. Its light is slightly wrong, too blue at the edges, too gold at the center, but it reaches everywhere it is supposed to reach. It does what light does, it keeps going.